Okay, so let us directly start. Uh, Let me share my screen. Okay, so can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So yesterday we stopped at basically we wrote down the expressions for the amplitude and the phase for the single electron. In the case of a single electron, which is under the influence of an external driving field, right? So this is the famous Lorentz model, and according to that we wrote down so basically you have these electrons sort of bound, and there is some kind of the atom is on the average charge neutral. But then when you have an electric field, there happens some kind of a force applied on the electron, because it has an inherent susceptibility or a polarizability, you may say, which basically means that the electron essentially can interact with the field, because the field gives rise to some kind of a dipole inside the atom, and that is essentially because the electron gets sort of displaced from its equilibrium position, so that the basic the charge there is this the charge neutrality is affected, so that you get at least a dipole working. And you know that a field, in order to produce energy, a field needs to interact with dipole. So this is as per what we have in the multipole expansion. Charge interacts with potential, field goes with dipole, quadrupole goes with the gradient of the field. The gradient of the field goes with quadrupole. That is, so we know there is some kind of energy exchange in this process. So energy exchange essentially means that the atom, or the material which is made up of atoms, it can just sort of absorb light, absorb energy from the field. So that is the big picture. Okay. But what happens is we are trying to find out what is the frequency dependence of this process. When I say frequency dependence, I mean that I come with light at different frequencies, and how the atom sort of responds, which essentially means how the electrons, which have a particular resonance frequency or an oscillation frequency, you can say, some which is essentially nothing but the k by m mass of electron and all that. So how do these electrons interact with a field which has its own frequency omega, and therefore the field acts, I mean the electron essentially is a forced damped driven oscillator. Okay, and we got these expressions for a and phi. And what I had asked to, so maybe I can again write these down a bit. So my a was nothing but this is again single electron. My a was some e square by m divided by omega 0 square minus omega square whole square plus gamma square omega square, and my phi was tan inverse just gamma omega by omega 0 square minus omega square. So my question to you had been, so now if you just sort of plot these
No, sir, there is a problem in the expression. So
uh,
there will be a square root in the denominator.
on this one. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So this is essentially half. Yeah, right. In this, uh, in the amplitude, do
In
we
the
have a
amplitude
square
part.
root? I don't think so, no,
In the
because,
denominator
uh,
only.
huh?
In the denominator only there will be a square root.
In the whole thing?
Yes, sir.
No, but see,
No, if there is a square root, then the dimension of the denominator will be inverse time, right?
So it is correct.
sorry?
If there is a square root, then the dimension of denominator will be inverse time, and
Okay.
of the numerator, it's uh, what? It's acceleration, right? So it's meter per second squared. So that
Mm,
will be meter per second. So it won't be the dimension of length. So
No,
it
no, no,
can't be
no. The
square root.
problem, no, it will be, and that A will be E square M in into E0 means E square by
Yeah,
M
that is
wait,
E0.
wait,
essentially
wait.
force by
I
m, right?
think what he's saying is correct. Yeah, I think what he is saying is indeed correct. Wait, yeah, I think, yeah, because if you do a cos and a sine,
Yes,
yes,
it will be
so,
square.
wait, but then my expression is so, let's just think, yeah, so, yeah, I mean, if you think of the derivation, uh, we basically have the x as just this thing, right? We have basically just I gamma omega, right? I gamma omega. So when we actually write down, okay, yeah, I think he's right. Yeah, I think he's right. Yes. I think what he's saying is right.
Sir,
Right. It's right. Yeah. Thank you, Mishra. Yes, it's indeed square root.
is that E square by m, or is it a small e into electric field by m and then divided by the original expression?
Acha, guys, I just think anyway. This I have done something to my microphone, so it is sounding very less actually. Give me a second. How do I change the settings? It's sounding very settings. Yeah, Rohan, what were you telling me? Yeah,
I
this
was
is
saying
much better.
that
Ah,
we are missing the electric field term in the amplitude. So I
That
guess
will
I
be
think it
there.
should be small e times electric field,
Yes,
and then in
by
denominator, I think the square root should not be there, I guess, because it is matching the dimension.
square root. We have to derive this thing. See, because we have to completely. It is. You're saying it's matching. See, okay. So basically, if you think of it, we have to solve that. Let me go back to that equation then. I think we wrote that equation here. Oh, the equation is not here, no? See, this is my x, okay? So if this is my x, that basically means that if I want to write this as some e I phi or something like that, okay? Yeah, that is, yeah, the E0 has to be there. You're right. E0 has to be there. E0, I think, has to be there. No, but see, so I write this as a e to the I phi or something like that, which means that if I want to get a, I have to basically multiply this by the this thing, by the complex conjugate. right? If I multiply by the complex conjugate, then I will get an omega square minus omega 0 square minus omega square whole square plus gamma square omega square. And here I will basically get a this will be
Sir, it is right. Square root should be there.
square root will be no, so
There is a square, right? So
yeah, that is correct. So no, basically what we will do is, so if you write x as essentially what we do is here. Okay, let me just go back. I should not write. So we write. So basically,
So the denominator is of the form a plus ib, so it will be square root of a square plus b square.
right, exactly. It should be form of this thing. So this will basically have, yes, you're right. This will essentially, yeah,
And Rohan was right about that.
yeah.
Instead of e square, it should be e into electric field.
yes, electric field will be there.
Electric field, but is it E?
Small e times capital E and then square root
Yes.
in the denominator.
Wait. This square. No, but that has. Are you sure that there is a? What do we do? So typically in all these expressions, we have some kind of a.
So
No,
the
why did the
small
t
e
square
times
equal become?
capital E will be force, and then divided by mass will give us acceleration. And, and then
That is true.
uh,
That is true. But e square by m is basically you need that dimension. So oh, okay. No. That
No,
is
sir. E square
basically
will come later for
yes.
p
In
square
the
will come.
polarizability thing. In the
Yes.
polarizability, yeah, it is very, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, right. So E square comes because we multiply this by E into X. So this is the amplitude. Yeah, right. That is absolutely correct. Yes. You're right. So basically, let me just clarify. So here we will not get that. Here we should just maybe, oh God, just rub this. And yeah, so E square will come later. That is correct. So we will write here as E into E by M, and this is fine. So how do we get E square? Because basically your polarizability is nothing but, it is, so for the single molecule, for the single atom, it is basically E into X. So that is why this gets multiplied by E and you get E squared by E by, and then of course there is an E also, so that this E gets cancelled out, right? So that is very clear. Yeah, that is good. Yeah, this is
So that A is magnitude of A, right? So that will be
magnitude
E naught.
of A. Correct. What?
So that
Sorry?
will be E naught. That will be
That
E
will
naught
be E
then.
naught. Yes, that is also right. We can write this as E naught. Correct. But see, this is, so the important part is, though, when we are sort of going to say, oh, so what I had asked you last class was would be the resonance frequency? That is, when will this be maximized? So if I plot this, this is kind of similar to a Lorentzian. It's not exactly similar, and the reason it's not exactly similar is that, so Lorentzian typically is some x squared plus a squared, right? So omega 0 square minus omega square plus, if you just had gamma square, this term would not have been there. Then this would have been a perfect Lorentzian. However, it is not. And this sent the resonance frequency, that is the maximum, where this A is maximum, that is actually kind of shifted, right? So what is the expression? Did you find that expression out? So where is that shifted? The actual omega for A max is at omega equal to, what is the frequency?
So root over of omega naught squared minus gamma squared by 2.
Exactly this, right? So omega 0 is actually here. So can you guys actually preempt, okay, why this should be minus? but like dot preempt, can you intuitively defend this? I mean, could this have been plus? I mean, obviously, by expression, you can say that it will not be plus. I mean, what you do is just maximize this, the derivative. I mean, you just put the derivative to 0 and find out the condition for this maximum at. But why do you, can you sort of defend this resonance frequency lowering? Can you defend that physically? Can we defend that this resonance frequency should lower? Can we defend that the resonance frequency should be less, not than omega 0? Why should there be this? So last class we sort of concluded that there's this damping coming in, as a result of which that essentially is going to shift the resonance frequency somewhat, because there is there is dissipation. So why do you think this reduces? When physically can we defend this or understand this? Is a better question. Could this have increased? Could this have become omega 0 squared plus? Yeah. What do you feel? Huh?
Sir, it couldn't have been plus because damping is essentially reducing our amplitude everywhere. So the resonance frequency.
Amplitude everywhere, say, I think what is better that you should say is that damping is a dissipative term. So because it's dissipative, if I actually shift this energy, it means your electron is actually gaining sort of, the resonance frequency is upshifting. But it is actually, so I think it's easier to think of this in the quantum mechanical equivalence, right? What we said was that you are, so suppose this electron, so, just think of this electron being at some, initial state and going to some final state, okay? And suppose you have some kind of thing coming at omega, and this frequency is at omega 0, right? Now, if you have some damping, what we are trying to say is that so essentially when omega equal to omega 0, you should get this transition to happen. But if there is a dissipation, then that dissipation will only result in the system losing energy. But if you have to get higher omega, so you are saying that this thing should be here, that means it has to gain energy from the source, which cannot happen, which is completely unphysical, because the damping dissipation essentially means there is a less than optimized transfer of energy. So the more energy is dissipated out, that means the frequency that the system finally receives, or the energy rather, the system finally receives, is actually lower, because the rest of it gets lost, irrevocably lost. So therefore, you can anticipate that the damping will actually cause damping will cause a lowering of the resonance frequency. I think this is important for you to appreciate, because though obviously mathematically if you solve, you'll easily get this answer, but it is important to appreciate that this the loss etc, the dissipation or damping is essentially a loss. So that means the transfer of energy is somewhat sort of disturbed, so that you do not get the system finally oscillating at the resonance frequency, but somewhat lower than that. So basically, this is something like omega dashed or something, if I say. And what is this? What is this frequency? Or is this sort of, so if I say that this is A, so what is this value? What is this value? Huh? This is very simple, right? You just put this. Tell me.
E into capital E by M omega naught.
Omega naught square, right?
Square.
Square.
Right. And this value, maximum value, how much is this? How much? Did anybody calculate that? Anybody knows what it will be?
It will be E naught by M divided by gamma into square root of omega naught square minus gamma square by 4
Is
square
that
root.
correct? Acha, so this is very long. Okay, let me just. Is that correct? Has anybody verified this? Come again. E naught. E naught.
E naught by M
Uh,
divided by gamma into square root of
okay.
omega naught square.
M gamma into square root of that. Is it?
Yes, M gamma into square root of everything will be in the denominator.
Yeah. Let me write. M gamma square root
Square
of
root omega naught square
omega naught square
minus gamma square by 4.
root.
Yes, square.
Okay. So this has to be. Please check. I'm
Yes, sir,
writing
it's
this.
correct.
This is check. Okay. You guys still right. Please check. Okay. However, what is interesting is the phase. The phase of why does this get? Okay, let me just draw this. Okay, I draw this as 0, pi by 2, and pi. Okay, so what initially what is the phase relationship? The drive and the driven, from here you can easily make out when omega is much less than omega 0 square. Then obviously the phase difference, this is like this omega tends to 0 one, this is 0, right? So we basically this thing will look like something like this, right? Well, so this is pi by 2. This at obviously at omega equal to omega 0, you can see this blows out. So at exactly at resonance, however, this is exactly at resonance. However, this is very interesting. So after resonance, so around the resonance, this shifts by pi. This is very important, right? Here the thing is quite nice because at the, so basically if you measure the phase, if you, for example, I'll say a simple experiment, say you want to know the resonance frequency of some particle which is under the influence of a driving field, then if you want to get the resonance frequency using an experiment where you drive the particle, then the phase actually gives you the correct representation of the resonance frequency. Because when you know that the system is pi by 2, if you were able to measure the phase, so you will basically be able to say that at when it's pi by 2, then the whatever frequency, whatever, so suppose you scan the input frequency, then you will actually see that, so this is basically tending to omega equal to in infinity. So let me just write this as omega, this is also omega. So when it basically the phase difference between the drive and the driven is pi by 2, then you basically know that that is the resonance frequency of the system. Here, if you go by maximum, however, there is a problem because the maximum does at the resonance frequency, there will be a shift, there will be dissipation or loss. So amplitude gets, so dissipation actually affects the amplitude. This is very important to note. The dissipation affects amplitude response more, no, I would say more. So by the way, response, let me just write the response in terms of shifting the resonance frequency. By the way, so how does dissipation affect the phase? What happens at different dissipations? How does this thing get changed?
The slope becomes less and
Slope will
less.
change, exactly. So for phase, slope becomes also slope around resonance, I should say. Slope of phase response becomes steeper with lower dissipation, right? Okay. So yeah, so this is basically the this and this is also very crucial to note that around resonance the phase changes by pi. This is very important to note. This is typically, so when you will further study these systems and when you study more resonance phenomena in other things, in other sort of areas of physics also, you will typically sort of read this or the understanding that that physicists generally have is that the phase shifts by pi around resonance. That is very crucial. So that pi by 2 exactly at resonance is something which is not given that much of critical importance. What is very crucial is that before and after resonance, you get a sort of shift of pi. That is what you will generally hear as the descriptor of resonance. Okay. So let us now go back to, so this is the general general understanding. And you know that when we finally try to get the polarization stuff and all, we multiply this by E. This is the amplitude. So the X we can multiply by E, and therefore we get this as E squared by M. And we wrote down the expression for polarization in the last class. So what we can now do is write down the stuff for the main stuff, that is the dielectric, the permittivity and the refractive index finally from there. Okay, so basically what we have, we saw, we know well is that this epsilon r is 1 plus chi e, and from the thing of polarizability, from the the expression of polarizability that we have, this is basically given by E squared by m. Sorry, this is not epsilon naught. This is epsilon naught. This is m epsilon naught. And the way we understood this was that there are different modes. I mean, there are different. You can think it as electrons in different levels, or a group of electrons having individual resonance frequencies. If you think in the classical picture, that is a way of understanding what we are doing here. So basically, we have like the ith electrons have a resonance frequency of omega I. So this essentially is omega I square minus omega square plus I gamma I omega I, right? And we wrote last class also that epsilon r is epsilon r1. Let us just write it. R1 minus, and this minus
So,
reason you will
will
get.
it be gamma I omega or omega I?
Oh,
Omega.
sorry. Very sorry. Just gamma I omega. Yes, thank you. Okay, so basically that means now if I want to find out this part and this part, what I just need to know, what I need to do is then multiply this by the complex conjugate, right? So then if I just write down omega, so we to find out the real and imaginary components, we multiply omega r by epsilon r by its complex conjugate, which essentially means that my epsilon r1 will be given by, that is like again so that is 1 plus chi e1 same way, which is 1 plus E square by m epsilon naught ni omega I square minus omega square divided, so this whole thing is summation over whole thing, I omega I square minus omega square whole square plus gamma I square omega square. Right? This is very simple. You just multiply, this is minus I omega. So when it goes to the top, this will basically become, this part will come here and then the gamma omega will be the complex one, right? And your epsilon R2 will be just chi E2, that is equal to E square by m epsilon naught summation over I ni gamma I omega divided by something omega I square minus omega square whole square plus gamma I square omega square. Okay, so this is the law, the complex part, that is the real part, right? And now if we plot these two, this is very, very interesting. We will basically get the, you know, so, you know, we are finally going to connect the refractive index and all that. Why does this not get? Just up so badly. Anyway, so this just does not. So, acha, so one thing that is typically done is to understand the behavior around resonance. Okay, so that you know what we sort of you know, because what really, you know, the interesting phenomena that actually happens, you know, near close to resonance, because things like anomalous dispersion and all that, what we'll see is that all, you know, those things happen under you know, when we actually have the driving frequency close to the resonance, and then we sort of approximate the behavior of these two. So if you just look at this, if you just say that around omega equal to omega, acha, so basically let us just consider a particular mode, a particular pi, you can say. Okay, which means that I basically mean that that is corresponding some resonance frequency omega naught. Okay, so what we want to see is around omega equal to omega naught, how these two behave. And that, so basically that means what I'm, so then this summation will not be there. I'm just assuming, so you know, whatever we see here, that will basically be you know, that you can essentially extend for all I. Okay, so whatever behavior you see for a particular mode, that can be understood to be the general response of the system if you consider the summation over all possible modes, because you know that these are non-interacting electrons, right? So what we typically do is, so this omega 0 square minus omega square, you write down as omega 0 plus omega and omega 0 minus omega. So obviously, so, you know, this part, I mean, you cannot put as 0, because then this is meaningless. It basically blows out everything, right? So this guy, we typically take as 2 omega naught. Okay, because this is very close to omega 0. I mean, omega and omega 0 are very close. And if I do that, then what I get by just simple, you can just look at, acha, another very important, very, very crucial concept. That is this n e square by m epsilon naught. You know what this is? What this is? This is omega p. What is that omega p? Any idea?
Plasma frequency.
Yes, but what is the meaning of that?
Omega p squares.
Ah, sorry. Yes, thank you. What is the meaning of that? Any idea, guys, about what that theoretically, what the concept of plasma? We'll of course come to, you know, we'll understand that in detail later on. But any clue what this plasma frequency physically means? Huh? What this plasma frequency basically physically means? Okay, so I'll just preempt it because I think the discussion, because it's a very, very interesting concept. So see, when you express this as omega p square and all that, you actually get a circumstance when this epsilon r1 can be 0. Okay, and that has tremendously interesting consequences, especially when we will do the Drude model. Okay, so the Drude model is just this, exactly the Lorentz model. Only difference is you do not consider bound electrons, you consider free electrons. Okay, so that restoring force is not there. Okay, so basically we will get a circumstance when we write down this epsilon r, we can just, the expression is very simple. It is what it just becomes something like some omega something minus omega p square by something. As you vary the input frequency, there will be a frequency when epsilon r becomes 0. Okay, and then that is a very, very interesting concept. Basically, the mode, the mode of the oscillation that exists. Okay, basically you can say that the resultant basically one we can say that the field which couples, you can say, the nature of the field that is induced on the metal, okay, that is longitudinal, that will not have a transverse component. That is very interesting. It's a very simple explanation. We'll look at that. But it means that this plasma frequency essentially means that the entire system of electrons, they just sort of behave as one single entity. And that is very interesting, right? Longitudinal field, it is absolutely not what we know by the typical, the Maxwell concept, right? I mean, where you have all three E, D, K perpendicular, K and E are all transverse and all that. So it is very interesting that when you have this, especially for metals, when you actually have this kind of plasma, the input frequency equal to the plasma frequency, this thing that you have, epsilon r essentially becomes 0 there, the real part. But can you appreciate what kind of effect this will have when you actually are coming with this input frequency where this plasma with this the epsilon r becomes 0 and you match the plasma frequency? What do you think will happen? What do you think will happen? Longitudinal field means what? What does that? What phenomena do you think you can induce? Huh? You can appreciate what I'm saying, right? I'm basically saying that you have a direction of the electric field component in the direction of the wave vector itself. But it is completely that. It is completely that. Where did you see this situation, similar type of situation? Okay. Where? By the way, let me see if you remember if anything is making sense here. So we are saying that the electric field has is basically longitudinal. So did we discuss somewhere where the electric field can have a longitudinal component? When was that? We had a pretty long discussion about this, no?
Yeah, so you had mentioned that the component of if the electric field was transverse, it had a component along the direction of energy.
No, when does that come? When does it? Why will that come? Why will that occur? Why is a longitudinal component essential?
When there is a big change in the transverse component of electric field.
When there's a what again, Rohan?
When there is a abrupt change in the transverse components of electric field.
What does that mean?
Spatial abrupt change, like delete.
Okay. Don't, I mean, okay, so yeah, okay, that way, yeah, okay, right. So basically you are saying that when I truncate the plane wave, you're basically saying when I am having a condition where the plane wave, which means that it has the field as infinite extent, when that condition is broken, right? When I have some boundary to my x and y components, so z component should not be there. But the moment I truncate the electric field in order to obey del dot E equal to 0 for charge free condition, then I need to have a Ez. Exactly. And the tighter, so what we also mentioned was that if you focus the electric field very, very strongly, then the rate of change in the x and y become actually slow, so that they are matching with the rate of change in z. So you cannot, so the rate, you sort of have a pretty enhanced longitudinal component also. Very good. So from there, this thing is even more interesting, because what we shall see is that in this case you will only have a longitudinal component, and that is basically when you match for metals. When we do with the Drude model, we'll see that when we match the plasmon frequency, this plasma frequency, sorry, I already gave you the answer of what I was asking. So this plasma frequency, when you match with the driving frequency, you get a longitudinal mode of oscillation, and essentially you excite what we say a plasmon mode. So you remember that when we did the evanescent theory, field case, where we went from denser to rarer medium, we actually saw that at the critical angle and beyond, you had a x direction wave, basically, right? It was traveling, there was a surface wave which went, and in the z direction, the field decays very, very sort of abruptly, so that we call that an evanescent wave. But then the propagating wave in that direction is along the surface, which is exactly what you get here. You can actually, you can excite plasmons in this approach. That is why it is called the plasma frequency. Okay. So we will cover this. Don't worry. We will cover this when we go a little detailed. So okay. So let me just get this. So what we were saying was around, we have this approximation. Then we basically can write this epsilon r1 as, again, please check if I'm right or wrong, because I did these things. I think this is the right expression. 2 omega 0 minus omega whole square plus gamma y. Gamma by 2 whole square this. Can somebody quickly check and tell me this is correct?
Yes, it is correct.
Good. Thank heaven. Okay, this is 4 omega. This one, please check. This one I'm not sure at all. Is this correct?
Sir, how did you write this?
Basically, I'm assuming this. So I'm taking a particular mode. Okay? I'm breaking this guy into omega 0 plus omega, omega 0 minus omega, omega 0 plus omega. I'm assuming to be 2 omega 0.
What happened to the other modes?
Other modes, no. So this is obviously true for all of them, na? I'm taking one particular mode. So in principle, you should have a summation and write I and all that. Okay. We are considering a particular I.
Oh, okay, got it.
Just a particular I. So then actually these are summations. So you will again put an I, and this is just for one mode I'm showing. Okay. Because see, the reason that I'm doing this. So hey guys, is this correct? The second one, is it correct?
No, 4 omega 0.
This is 0, na? Okay. Hey, please check this. Please check. I think this is what Bishwajit is saying is correct. but please check this. Okay, so see, the reason that again one does this is you can, okay, so very straightforward is, okay, now let us just, no, but maybe I should, idiot, why the hell is this not zooming out here? Ah, no, suddenly it worked. Okay. But again, it's not going for it's probably too small. Choro, I'll make it in a different thing. Okay, so you can at least you can preempt this. So we are basically now I am going to plot this epsilon R1 and epsilon R2. Okay. This is not a good way of writing R. Okay. So what you can certainly see here, in this thing, what happens for the resonance frequency? So if I say plot, if we plot say epsilon R 1 minus 1, if we plot that versus omega, so what happens to this quantity as omega not equals to omega?
0.
0. Very interesting. And this one is never 0, right? Very crucial. This is never 0. This is always 0. Okay, now let us go and plot and now understand the physical consequences. Try to make this more. Okay, so basically we plot epsilon R1 and epsilon R2 versus omega. Okay. Achha, I think I write down the expression because otherwise. So see, the reason that we kind of do that. So basically, if you just look at this epsilon R1 is 1 plus omega p square omega 0 minus omega pi 2 omega naught by omega 0 minus omega whole square plus gamma by 2 whole square, and omega epsilon R2 is gamma omega p square by 4 omega naught omega 0 minus omega whole square plus gamma by 2 whole square. Acha, let me just put a bit of space. So what do you think will be the nature of this epsilon? So okay, okay, this epsilon R2, what do you think will be the nature of this graph around? So if I consider that, you know, near this omega 0 equal to omega, what will be the nature of this? Yeah. This function is what? This function?
Something like Lorentzian.
Not something. This is exactly Lorentzian.
Exactly.
This is like omega square plus this is this thing, right? Omega 0 minus this omega, nothing but x square plus omega plus some constant square, right? This is exactly Lorentzian. Okay, so that is one of the reasons that we typically look at this kind of thing. So now if I just draw this graph, I will acha. So and what happens at omega equal to 0 here? Omega equal to 0 here. What? Omega equal to 0. What happens to this? How much is this?
Omega p square upon gamma omega naught.
No, so this is 0. So omega is plus gamma. Hey, Vishwajit, are you sure this is omega? No, I think this is omega. Yeah, this is correct. This is omega naught. Yeah, this is correct. So omega equal to 0, 1. This is omega 0 plus gamma square. No. Omega square plus gamma by 2. So this is very complicated. Anyway, let us just do this. So basically, what I have is something like that, and so if I follow this kind of thing for such, and what is the other one, by the way? Other one is very interesting, right? It goes as something like like that. Oh shit, that is really bad.
So you can use the undo button, I guess.
Yes, you're right. Thank you. Exactly. Yes, got it. Nice. Okay. So this is this one I say is I'm plotting epsilon R1 minus 1, and this is your epsilon R2. Okay. And here I kind of, what I do is this is both at, and this is of course omega, and this is essentially whatever epsilon amplitudes. So by the way, so this point, so we should just write this one. This one, I think it is given by ये क्या value? So this one, if you actually take, I mean, if I again do that trick of looking at omega 0 close to omega, then this one I think is simple. Then this resonance actually happens at omega 0 equal to omega. Okay, so you can see that there is no omega term here, right? So basically, this will just mean that this will become this one. Sorry, this is 0. This is obviously 0. Epsilon r plus minus 1 is 0, straight, no doubt. But this one at this omega 0 equal to omega 1, this term is 0, and this is gamma by 2. So gamma square by 4. So 4 cancel. So gamma also cancels. Gamma is there in the denominator, right? So we will get omega p square by what? Omega 0 gamma, right? Is that correct? Omega 0 gamma, I guess, right?
Yes.
And this term where omega is 0, इसमें that is इसमें इसके क्या है? So I put 0 here. So ये 0 गया मतलब omega p square into omega 0, and this one is omega 0 square. अरे बाबा, this is a कितना आ रहा है?
At omega equals to 0.
At omega equal to 0.
1 plus omega p square.
No, 1 plus now. This is Vishwajit, this is epsilon r minus 1. So I'm plotting this whole thing. Epsilon minus 1. So this comes as
omega p square by
omega p square by
2 times omega naught square plus gamma by 2 whole square.
Okay, this is not interesting. What is interesting, of course, so as you know, this is the interesting part. This is the very, very interesting part. This is how it behaves near resonance. This is really fascinating. So you can appreciate that this, so epsilon R1, this is the real part and this is the imaginary part. So at resonance, if I see this at resonance, what we are actually getting, so this I can write down as like this is epsilon R1, R2, this one. So you can see that around resonance, my imaginary component, that is maximum. And the real part of this one, at least epsilon minus 1, that is part is 0, right? So that has a lot of consequences, right? And most interesting is, so obviously see what I will do from here is I will try to relate this to the refractive index, right? So the refractive index, how will I do? So basically, you know that the refractive index, we typically mention that as Ri, that is basically equal to root of epsilon r, right? Which means that is 1 plus chi E1 minus say I chi E2. By the way, the reason that I took minus is so that this term is now positive. If you don't take this as minus, then there will be a very nuisance like negative term here. I think that is the reason that we take minus here.
Sir,
Okay.
I have a question. for this epsilon r1 and epsilon r2, we use the approximation that omega is near omega 0. Then we plotted them. But
Kind of. I mean, nah, but see, so basically, Rohan, that approximation we are using actually here. So this part is, of course, again, we should not hold this. Okay, so I'm basically what I tried to do was in this region, I am sort of approximating this function to be this, so that this omega 0 becomes the kind of resonance where both are happening. But see, essentially, what I'm trying to do is we are seeing that we are sort of, kind of that gamma part we are sort of absorbing inside. So see, what actually happens is that, see, this frequency will slightly shift. If I take the whole expression, this frequency will be slightly different. This one will not change. The real part thing will remain same. This imaginary part one, that one will, the peak will slightly be different, but the average behavior does not modify. Average behavior will exactly remain the same, except that the values will be slightly either udhar. And for all intents and purposes, we typically this omega 0 is the actual resonance. I mean, that is, and of course the spectrum is like at me. So what we are trying to say essentially is that near resonance, the imaginary part behaves like a Lorentzian. If I just take this part, that behaves like a
that's what I'm
Lorentzian.
saying, that for any further calculation, we
Right,
should
right, right.
consider it only on resonance.
Yes, correct. That I agree. That I totally agree. That we are basically saying, so we should say that near resonance, this epsilon R2 behaves like a Lorentzian. This is crucial. Okay, so here again, acha, so this is fine, right? This is absolutely clear. So then we also know that for acha, this is again an assumption, but you can probably I think this is fine because we have finally these are not this is non-interacting. So because of non-interacting, the density is low, so we can safely kind of write this. Okay, if you have complicated systems, if you have very very dense medium and all, anisotropy comes in and all kinds of things come in, then obviously this whole treatment collapses. Okay, but for this, I think it is not a problem to write, and we essentially say that your n essentially becomes 1 plus half chi e1 minus half this is I, yeah, so this is I chi e2, right? I'm all higher order terms neglected. So very simply what I will get is your n, if I write that also as n1 plus I n2, then your n1 is nothing but 1 plus e square, just 2 uska 2 ek 2 aa gaya, epsilon naught. We can write in terms of omega p square v square v, that also is possible, but no, I'm writing the whole expression. So whole expression likha matlab wo omega pi likhna hoga, so I don't want to complicate the notation. I'm just writing the entire expression. So this is just omega I square by this thing divided by omega I square minus omega square plus gamma I square omega square, and your n2 is e square by 2m epsilon naught, basically again over I, summation over I, ni gamma I omega divided by same thing, that omega I square minus omega square plus omega I gamma square plus. So I can basically write the same thing as n1 minus 1 and this as n2, right? So now comes the really interesting questions, because what is the role of n1 and n2 is basically what we need to understand. And you can straight, now some things I will write down which you need to just justify, I mean just verify for tomorrow's next class. That is, so dispersion in Ri, So you can clearly see that if I write this, so yeah, okay. So anomalous dispersion is what is crucial. This is basically region around the resonance frequency, right? And what we straight know is if I write your E rather electric field as E0 e to the I, something like, omega t minus n omega by c z. This is fine, right? This kz code I am writing like this. Basically, what I mean is 0I n1 omega by c z n1 minus omega t e to the minus n2 omega z by c. So clearly, n1 means it is the propagation of the wave, and n2 is nothing but dissipation or absorption. This is very critical, and the reason that it is critical is something that I would like you to understand, and this is very interesting. This is your task for, in fact, I think we will have a discussion on this. Can you explain the color of objects from this? You understood the question? Please understand, there are two things. There is the color of light, there is the color of materials. My question again is the color of light and the color of materials the same? Repeat. Is the color of light, is it same as color of light? This question is clear what I'm asking. Any doubts about the question? Anything you feel is strange? These are very interesting questions. I'm actually telling you that the color of light, I mean, I don't know if you've ever pondered this. I'm asking you, is the color of light and the color of a piece of cloth, the color of your laptop, the color of whatever things you see around you, is this the same thing? And what is the meaning when I ask this question? Why the hell am I asking this question?
So basically, you're saying that when we shine a light of lambda, then the wavelength which is missing when we see, is it exactly lambda or something else?
No, you have almost jumped to the answer, Rohan. But what I'm trying to say is you have to appreciate what is the color of light and what is the color of objects that we see around us. Are they the same? You say, yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, but essentially, okay. So, do others have any feeling about this, or do you? Bolo? Do you have any feeling about this?
Are they complementary in nature?
Exactly. Actually, this is Chitradeep, I think. That is actually the answer. So, complementary color is, the color of an object is actually a complementary color. Please, let us discuss this tomorrow.
Sir, I have a question. So when we say this refractive index depends on the wavelength of the wave that is propagating in the middle. The
Let me
dependence of wavelength.
just give me a second here. Let me just close this. We'll discuss this tomorrow. Let me unshare and let me just show myself a bit. Stop presenting and switch on the camera. Just a little bit. Bolo, please come again.
Yeah, so we know that this refractive index depends on the wavelength of the wave that is propagating in the material.
Yes.
So this wavelength dependence, is it related to the real part of the refractive index or the imaginary or the both?
Both. Straight. No. It is both, right? So, Hitesh, what you have to understand. So, please, I want you to make pictures out of this. Pictures. When I am telling you about the real part, that has to do with propagation. Propagation means what? What is the interesting part in propagation? Can you tell me? What is the important part in propagation? What is the crucial thing that is important in propagation? Huh? Are?
The, the interaction of light with the matter itself. The
No,
model,
no, no,
the
no,
forms.
Hitesh. Hitesh, no. What is crucial in propagation is the velocity of light. Because that is, why is it so important? Because, see, propagation basically means how the wave is moving inside the medium. Okay. And there are some extremely interesting facets here. See, because from here itself, you know that, of course, the velocity, the refractive index, it the fact that there's a refractive index means that the velocity is not the velocity of light. In fact, the ratio of the velocity of light in vacuum vacuum and in any other medium, that ratio is itself the refractive index, right? Which means the velocity is different. So that part, how the phase propagates, is something which is with the velocity of light. And by the way, why is the velocity of light so important? Have you guys ever thought of this? Why is the velocity of light so important? Why is it so important? What is the crucial, fantastically important aspect of the velocity of light in physics or in everything?
It's
What
the
is,
speed limit of anything.
hey, no, Anirudh, more precise. What is anything? What does anything mean? That is not correct, by the way. That is actually not correct. That is not correct. That is, if you say anything, then you are not correct.
Not
Because,
anything like matter.
again, not precise. What matter, matlab? Oh, matter. Okay, matter. Oh, well, okay, Anirudh. So you can straight see from here, from this graphs that we drew, that anomalous dispersion is a problem, right? Because very clearly the velocity can be lesser than that, can be less than 1, right? Because that thing is becoming negative. N1 minus 1 is becoming negative. So n will be less than 1. So you will have velocities greater than c. You will straight have velocities greater than c, right? So that is that. So we'll again discuss this in detail, but I want you to feel excited about this. Does it actually challenge the theory of relativity? Which is fast light, slow light, whatever business we say. Is it challenging the theory of
No,
relativity?
no, sir, because it does not carry any useful information. So,
Right. So Anirudh, what you should have said is, it is basically the speed of signals. Signals. That is the crucial part. It is the speed of signals that cannot go beyond the velocity of light. Okay, so we will again discuss this in detail, but what I wanted again, Hitesh, you need to be clear about this, is in the dispersion property in the real part is basically telling you about how signals propagate. And signal means, so the phase velocity clearly, as you see, can go more than 1. Even the group velocity can also exceed. Okay, you can say that group velocity is like this. I mean, signals actually go at group velocity because they are the envelope of many pulses which come. But actually, we will argue later on that so the meaning of signal and all we will argue. So that again, special relativity is not violated. But what I want to just say here is that the dispersion of dispersion in refractive index is important in the real part, in the context of how light, at what velocities light propagates inside media. And for the imaginary part, it is important because it tells you about the frequency, the absorption of light, how absorption is different at different frequencies. That is the picture I want you guys to have. Absorption is different. And from there, Chitradeep just gave this idea. We'll discuss again. Basically, complementary color. What we see as color of light is not the color of objects. Very important. Okay, so that is again crucial. I mean, the color of light and the color of objects are not the same. So that is again totally dependent on this absorption and how the amount of absorption changes with change in light frequency. Okay, so let us just think of, maybe you should think about this a bit deeply, read about it before Thursday about this complementary colors. Okay, any other question? Okay. Okay, so I'm not giving an assignment today, but assignment matlab, I think you should verify these calculations a bit if anywhere I have just made any silly mistake. And more importantly, this complementary color thing, I hope you will understand, and we shall discuss this meaningfully, because next class, very will try to understand what it means, what physically it means when we say that the velocity is more than, the phase velocity is more than that of light. What does it mean? That is very important. Just when writing down a calculation and saying that, okay, that means this is more than C, it does not give you any physical picture. I believe in pictures. Okay, so that is what we'll discuss. Things will become more interesting. And fine, complementary colors is what you should just think about. Okay, guys, bye then.